Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show, and I could not be more excited than to have my next guest on the program, because the Old Towne Gallery is about to have something very, very special in the gallery itself, and that is some awesome art from Salvador Dali. Mitch, welcome to the show. It's great to have you. Mitch Carter, who is the curator of this exhibit, and it's not often that we get to have museum pieces in a gallery in Park City.
No, this is
wow.
This is definitely a rarity. I mean, truthfully, this would be a rarity for just about anywhere. The show was recently in Singapore. It's been written up in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and primarily the reason for the attention is its source. I mean, when you think about the great artists, you know, of our past 100, 150 years, you know, people like Salvador Dali, Picasso, Miro, to have an opportunity to see the pieces is one thing. To have an opportunity to acquire them is certainly something else. But when you add to the fact that these pieces are what we call archival pieces, simply put, that means they came directly out of the collection of the direct descendants of Pierre Argillet, Madame Argillet,
wow,
who is going to be here. She is truthfully one of the biggest reasons to come to this show, to have a chance to meet Madame Argillet. And again, just a little bit of background. She is the daughter of Pierre Argillet, who was Salvador Dali's publisher and one of his best friends. There's a fun history there, because back in, you know, in this time period, in the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, as Salvador Dali was doing these works, it was difficult for Pierre Argillet to actually be next to him, because he's in Paris, Salvador Dali's in Spain. And so Madame Argillet, as a young girl, as a very little girl, was able to spend her summers at Salvador Dali's house in Spain for about a 15-year period. And they became, he kind of referred to her as his little angel. She was his muse in several cases. And now, of course, Pierre has passed on, and for many years the archive has been in the hands of Christine, in the hand of Madame Argillet.
Wow. I had the good fortune of getting to go to the museum in Florida.
Oh yes,
and meeting some of the family, the descendants of Salvador Dali, and the experience of going through those pieces with them, much like what this experience will be for others, because they were able to speak about, you know, in a depth, in a way that other people couldn't of his artwork.
Right.
And that is what the experience should be like this weekend.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, speaking of which, just to be clear, the show is beginning March 17th. Madame Argillet will be there on Friday, the 17th, from 7 to 9. She'll be there on Saturday, the 18th, from 11 to 1, and then again from 7 to 9. And then on Sunday, on the 19th, the final day, from 1 to 3 p.m.
So you have a week to clear your schedule.
Yes.
For what is arguably going to be the best art exhibit we've had in Park City.
Well, speaking of which, the preview is happening now. The preview will open today, so people can come in to view the pieces and ask questions, but you want to make sure you come back and meet Madame Argillet.
Indeed. Now, you said that there's a chance to acquire pieces.
Yes.
Talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are we going to sell an original?
Yes, absolutely. The pieces that you see here on stage and here in our studio, just very quickly, Salvador Dali was perhaps, in fact, if I may, just briefly talking about his history. The thing that always amazed me, I've been an art auctioneer for 20 years. I've sold roughly $100 million worth of art plus. But as I think about the history of Salvador Dali and what I've seen just go through the past, all the way to the present, of course, he was a genius in two separate levels, two separate ways. In his time period, of course, he was technically one of the most gifted painters and artists around. He could capture almost anything. But the second part of his genius was his imagination.
Right.
For example, during that time, Monet painted his, well, that's actually before, but to give you an example, Monet painted his water lilies, Van Gogh painted his flowers, Degas painted his ballerinas. Most artists painted what they saw. They had a subject that they were painting. Salvador Dali, it all came from his imagination. He was the first artist to come along and try to tap into the subconscious, to that dream state, and capture these works. but he was a magnificent printmaker. For example, what we see here, both of these are etchings. Now, etching in itself is a very difficult art form, using a copper plate, and then you use an acid to actually burn the image and then print the piece. 95% of the time when you see an etching, it's black and white. I mean, it's always...
Rarely do we see color.
Very rarely do we see color. Now, in order to create color, it means you have to do one of two things. Either create a separate plate, which is also very challenging,
yes,
or in Dali's case, he just hand-colored them, which is just something you don't see.
Wow.
That is a hand-colored etching by Salvador Dali. And then the piece over your left shoulder, of course, is
I'm so
one
excited.
Yeah.
This is an original.
Yep.
This is the real thing right here. What is the name of this piece?
I actually am not certain of the exact name of that piece. I would have to go look on the back. But this is an original by him, and as you can see, he painted in a great deal of detail, very, very specific in the way he would create. And another thing you'll notice that I always love about Dali's work, it's just something that he did quite regularly. If you see the line drawn across the background in the lower quarter of the piece, by doing that one thing, he was able to create distance in all of his pieces. So we get that surrealistic effect of distance, and he can fill up the background, the foreground, so when you're looking at it, it looks like something you could step into. Yeah.
But yet, interestingly, and he manages to still keep the viewer's eye going where he wants them to, because typically your eye is drawn to distant objects.
Yes.
So you would normally go to that, but that's really not where your eye is typically drawn. That's we get the color up here at the top, and so instead you find yourself going there.
Exactly.
Which is impressive. That's very sophisticated in its
and especially during that time period, because again, most of the time we just didn't see distance. But as I was saying, the real magnificence of this show, I mean, it's one, to come and see the pieces, have a chance to acquire them. You're right. Yeah. But perhaps the most important thing when we talk about acquisition, when people are talking about or thinking about acquiring master works, of course, the question of authenticity. I mean, it would pop into everybody's head.
And it should, because there are some great fakes out there. There are some really, again, we have to think about the sheer number of people that we're talking about working on just to fake just a very few masters. There are some incredibly good fakers out there.
There have been. There most certainly has been. But when we look at this piece and the pieces behind us, what is really fantastic is that they are coming, as I said, we call them archival pieces. This piece has never been sold. It's never been. Yeah. I mean, most of the masterworks at this stage are in what we call the secondary market, meaning they're owned by a collection and a state.
And who knows how many places they've been,
or how many steps they've gone through.
Right.
In this particular case, they have come directly from Salvador Dali to Pierre Argillet to Madame Argillet to Park City.
Yeah. Wow. I'm sitting next to an authentic original, and it's worth at least a couple $100,000 at minimum.
That's
I
correct.
can hardly believe it.
No, it's
right here next to me. I'm so excited. And I have to say, as artists go, my favorite thing about Salvador Dali is this. He is every bit as sophisticated in his way of was in his way of marketing. What we dream of doing today. We have kids who think they're so good on the internet of drawing attention to themselves. We have artists in the music world, Madonna and so many others, who think that they are so good about drawing attention to themselves. They don't even touch Salvador Dali.
No, he learned at a very young age. One of my favorite stories about Dali was the fact that he went to the Royal Academy of Madrid. He studied there, but he never graduated. In fact, he was expelled twice. But the reason he was expelled is I think he knew at a very young age that he had a gift, a real gift. The issue was he had no problem talking about that gift, and he would tell the professors that they had no business giving him exams. In fact, they should be taking exams from him. And this, of course, did not sit very well with the professors at the Royal Academy of Madrid, and so it didn't end well. But as he went to Paris to begin his career, he learned there that his eccentric behavior, which came naturally to him, was in a way a big draw for the collectors, for the big collectors, because they would become more curious about him. Who is this person who is behaving in this way?
Yeah.
And so even throughout his career, whenever we see pictures of Salvador Dali, it's often with the eyes up and this kind of madman look, when the truth of the matter is he he was extraordinarily intelligent. He was a genius when it came to this type of presenting that image. In fact, one of his great quotes is, "The difference between a madman and I is I am not a madman."
But he wanted everybody to think he was, or at least, you know, the typical was to draw attention to himself with some kind of crazy, outlandish comment, elaborate display. His filmmaking, another part of that all by itself. You know, when film was just beginning, he embraced it immediately and took it on in a way that others hadn't. And again, drew attention to himself through maybe what might be considered crazy behavior. But as they say, there is no such thing as bad PR.
No.
He drew a lot of people in this way. All that we talk about now with young people and their ability to charm people on Facebook and all these different devices. Imagine what he would do with it. Yeah, and
he was indeed very charming. He really had a way of. I mean, from what I have heard, obviously I never met him. I wish I had, but from everything I've heard, he had a way of, when he walked into a room, he could simply just. He could command the room. The moment he came in, just with his presence, his energy, and that's one of the reasons, of course, to come and meet Madame Argillet. Perhaps she's one of the few people around who spent enormous amounts of time with him. You not only have a chance to, of course, to view and acquire the art, but you get a chance to speak to her and meet her, where she is going to give insights that, quite frankly, very few people on earth could possibly give.
Well, I'm hoping that we get the opportunity. We hear that there may be a possibility she might be here on our program, and I can hardly wait if that happens. I am very excited to talk to her myself.
Fascinating woman to interview. Wow. Absolutely fascinating.
Well, so are you, Mitch. This is terrific. I can't tell you how pleased I am to have had you here to talk about these wonderful pieces that are behind us. We could spend hours, but that's what going to Old Towne Gallery is all about. Go over and check them out. Is the preview today?
Yeah, the preview is happening starting today, and it is again Old Towne Gallery on Main Street, and then again Friday, March 17th from 7 to 9, Saturday the 18th from 11 to 1 and 7 to 9, and then Sunday the 19th from 1 until 3 p.m. Madame Argillet will be there, and that's something you really don't want to miss.
I can hardly believe it's real. Thank you so very much, Mitch, for being here. I want to thank my friend Colby Larson, of course, the owner of Old Towne Gallery, for making all this possible. He's such a great friend, and I am just beyond excited to spend a little more time with these pieces. So we're sending you to a commercial break while I admire them. Your chance comes at Old Towne Gallery all this week, and of course next weekend when you can meet Madame Argillet. We will be back with more right here on the Mountain Morning Show right after these messages.